Stephen King's Pet Sematary. The movie opens up in the Pet Cemetery, where we get an eerie shot of the gravestones. We then cut to a road where we see an 18-wheeler just making its rounds. Remember this truck, folks. It's going to be a heavy plot device later on. That's when we see it, the Creed house. This is where we meet the Creed family, who is pulling up to their new humble abode. It seems to be the house of their dreams. But oh, are they in store for some shit later? Little Ellie sees a strange path while on the tire swing. Wonder where that leads. This is the family cat, Church. Ain't he a cute little devil? Little baby man Gage wanders a little too close to the busy road right as a huge truck is driving towards him. Then, out of nowhere, Judd, played by the one and only Fred Gwynne. Yeah, you know him as the iconic Herman Munster. He scoops baby Gage right out of the way in the nick of test.
You don't, my friend. Not in that road.
This is where we meet the neighbor, Judd, and he tells him about how hazardous that road can be.
You want to watch out that road. Them damn trucks go back and forth all day and most of the night.
Miss Creed then asks Judd about the mysterious path.
There's a path over there. Do you know where it goes?
That's a good story. A good walk. I'll take you up there sometime. Tell you the story, too. After you get settled in.
Later that night, Lewis goes out in the yard to get a look at the ominous path when this happens.
Scared the life out of me, Church.
It's a sign that you should stay away from that goddamn path, Lewis. He then sees Judd having a smoke out on his porch and decides to join him. After they crack open a couple of cold ones, Judd gives us a little exposition on the strange path behind their house.
Well, where does it lead?
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery.
There's that damn road. Uses up a lot of animals.
Lewis tells Judd that his daughter has a cat, and Judd suggests that they get it fixed so it doesn't wander out into the road and get pulverized by a truck.
I get him fixed, why, Fixed cat don't tend to wander. So all the time crossing back and forth on that road, his luck will run out.
The foreshadowing in this movie, huh? It's the next morning and the Creed family is doing some unpacking where we meet the nanny, Missy. Turns out she has some terrible stomach problems.
Always thought it would be lucky to marry a doctor. Wish I had a doctor around with my stomach pain so bad. Guess I'll never be lucky.
And now it's time to finally explore the mysterious path that leads to the Pet Cemetery.
What's it say, Mommy?
It says Pet Cemetery, honey. It's misspelled, but that's what it says.
This is where we get a glimpse of the gloomy animal graveyard. And old Judd gives us a little backstory on the place and his past experiences with it.
They wasn't all killed by the road. Especially the ones from back in my time as a child. That's where I buried my dog Spot when he died of old age in 1924.
He then asks Ellie if she knows what a graveyard really is.
I guess not.
It's a place where the dead speak. This ain't a scary place, Ellie. It's a place of rest and speaking.
An eerie pile of sticks and twigs nearby gives off an uneasy vibe. Something is definitely not right about this shit. Cut to nighttime and the Creed family is starting to settle down when Lewis has the death talk with his daughter, who's worried about her cat dying after visiting the Pet Cemetery.
He's not God's cat, he's my cat. But God gets on if he wants one. Not mine.
Dark. Cut to the next morning and it's back to school for Ellie and back to work for Lewis. But right before Lewis heads out, he has a little talk with his daughter about Church's operation.
Well, the road is a lot more dangerous than any operation. Church will be just the same. You won't have to worry about him getting run over in the road by trucks.
Oh, and this is what Gage thinks about it all. It's Lewis's first day back on the job. And let me tell you something here, folks. It's one hell of a first day back. So, ironically, this guy, Pascal, was hit by a truck. and he's here to give Lewis a message from beyond the grave.
Soil of a man's heart, stonier.
Shit. Later on that night, the ghostly jogger pays the doctor another visit.
Come on, Doc. We've got places to go.
That's some nightmare fuel right there. Only thing is, this is no nightmare.
I don't like this dream. Who said you were dreaming?
Lewis follows the corpse out to the pet cemetery.
Do not go on to the place where the dead walk.
Lewis then wakes up in his bed. It must have been a dream, right? It was no fucking dream, holy shit! It's Thanksgiving time and the Creed family is going out of town. Well, everyone except Lewis, that is. He's just kinda hanging out when he gets a call from Judd.
There's a dead cat over here on the edge of my lawn. Oh, Jesus. I think it might be your daughter's.
Lewis then goes over to identify the body.
Yep. That's church, all right.
Lewis doesn't know what to do when good old Judd here comes up with a plan. They get out to the pet cemetery, and Lewis is about to bury the dead cat when Judd suggests that they go to a different spot that's a little further up the hill. Just so happens to be beyond the ominous thicket that Pascal warned him not to cross. They finally make it to the top, and this is where we see the massive Indian burial ground.
This was their burial ground.
Whose burial ground?
Micmac Indians. I brought you here to bury Ellen's cat.
Apparently, whatever is buried here returns to life.
You gotta do it yourself. Each buries his own.
But Judd fails to tell him about the whole resurrection part. Back at the Creed house, Judd says something that rings oddly familiar.
The soil of a man's heart, Lewis, is stonier. Like the soil up there in the old Micmac burying ground.
Creepy. Lewis decides to call in and check on his family, but can't seem to break the news to his daughter about her currently deceased feline friend.
How's church, Daddy?
Well, I guess he's just fine, Ellie. I haven't seen him this evening, but...
It's the next day where Lewis is raking some leaves, and when he goes to take a break, this happens.
Church.
Lewis can't believe his eyes. The cat is fucking alive. But how? Well, Church doesn't appreciate Lewis gawking at him, and he gives him a little taste of his kitty pimp hand. Scratch the piss out of him. Lewis then goes to Judd, because he could have sworn the damn cat was dead.
When you moved him, he pulled out the frost, Lewis. Sounded like a piece of ticky tape coming off a letter. Live things don't do that.
This is where Judd explains just how the burial ground works.
It was the ragman told me about the place. He was half Micmac himself. Ragman did for me what I did for you last night. Only I wasn't alone. Spot came back.
Basically, whatever is buried there comes back to life. But when it does, it comes back purely and simply evil.
Man doesn't always know why he does things, Lewis. I think I did it because your daughter ain't ready for her favorite pet to die.
Lewis finally asks the question that we're all thinking at this point.
Has anyone ever buried a person up there?
Christ on his throne, no. Whoever would.
So I guess that's a no? It's bath time, and Lewis is just kicking back to relax, when all of a sudden, Church feels like he needs a bath toy. Oh, Lewis is headed up to here with this fucking furball. Cut to the airport where Lewis is picking up his family, where Ellie tells him about the ironic dream she had.
I had a dream about him. I dreamed he got hit by a car and you and Mr. Crandall buried him in the pet cemetery.
We then cut to this dark scene here. Yikes. It's Missy's funeral, and this is where we get a brief Stephen King cameo.
May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Right as they're about to leave, we get this iconic line here.
How's your cat, Lois?
It's Ellie's cat.
No. It's your cat now.
Later on that night, Lewis has another death talk with his daughter.
I think we go on.
He's about to call it a night when his wife Rachel comes in the room looking pretty upset. And this is when she tells us about the legend of Zelda.
My sister, Zelda. She was in the back bedroom like a dirty secret.
Legend goes that Zelda suffered from spinal meningitis, and it resulted in her becoming bound to her bed with the appearance of a distorted monster. And one day, she ends up choking and fucking dying. The even darker thing is that Rachel secretly wanted her dead.
I must say, you wanted her to be dead, and that was true, too.
Now that's dark. When we cut back to the Creed house where they're out having a family picnic and flying a kite on this beautiful day, Gage is flying the shit out of that kite, just letting her rip, when he loses his grip on the reel and it starts to get away from him. And Lewis, for some reason, isn't paying attention to his son like he should be when this happens. Now that is fucking brutal. Jeez. At Gage's funeral, tensions begin to rise.
Where were you when he was playing in the road?
He's got a fucking point there, Lewis.
You killer of children!
Truly disturbing scene. Yeesh. It's nightfall and Judge has come to pay his respects, and he feels somewhat responsible for everything. He knows Lewis is thinking about burying Gage at the burial ground, but comes to finally spill the beans on why it would be a horrible mistake.
You asked me if anyone had ever buried a person up there in the Micmac grounds. I lied to you when I said no. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person.
With all that being said, Lewis knows exactly what he must do. Time to send the rest of the family away so he can handle his macabre business. But right before departure, Ellie tells us about another vision she had.
I had a bad dream last night.
About what?
About Daddy and Gage and someone named Pax Cat.
We then cut to Gage's grave, because the doctor has got some fucking work to do.
The barrier was not meant to be crossed. The ground is sour.
Over in Chicago, Ellie is having more visions.
Pax Cat says Daddy's gonna do something really bad.
Who is this Pax Cat?
He's a good ghost. He says he was sent to warn us.
This is when Rachel comes to a disturbing realization.
Was she saying Pascal?
He was trying to help me because Daddy was helping him when his soul
Corporate.
Rachel can't get a hold of Lewis for shit, so she calls Judd to inform him that she will be coming home early.
Don't bother, Judd. I'm coming home.
Rachel, no. You don't want to do that.
I have to do it, Judd. Goodbye.
Rachel! Rachel!
After a truly uncomfortably morbid scene of Lewis holding his dead son, we cut to Rachel, who is literally having hallucinations of her dark inner guilt.
I'm coming for you, Rachel.
Fuck it! Cut back to the Creed house and we see Lewis walking the trail to the pet cemetery. It's off to the Indian burial ground. Lewis is climbing to the top of the mountain and just slipping further and further into insanity with each and every step. Now that he's made it to the top of the mountain, it's time to bury his son. After all that grave digging and reburying, Lewis is fucking pooped from out of the rocky grave. baby Gage rises again. The undead toddler sneaks in while his dad is passed out and arms himself with a very sharp scalpel. Then it's off to Judd's house to play a good old-fashioned game of hide-and-seek.
When you...
Shit! Rachel finally arrives home, but right before she's about to cross the street...
Rachel!
She then goes into the house, where we get yet another one of the scariest scenes that I remember really fucking with me as a kid.
Never get out of bed again! Never get out of bed again! Never get out of bed again!
Then Gage shows up out of nowhere looking all cute in his little top hat. But it's a fucking trap.
Oh, Gage. Gage.
I brought you something, Mommy.
Lewis wakes up to a bump on the head the next morning, and he sees that Gage has been here and that his scalpel is missing.
First I played with Dad, then Mommy came and I played with Mommy. We played, Daddy. We had an awful good time.
But first, it's time to give Church his well-needed rabies shot.
Lie down. Lay dead. Be dead!
Judd is still hiding, by the way, but don't worry, Lewis finds him. Lewis heads out in the hallway, where he bumps right into his wife, who's just hanging out. He then sees Gage. There's a bit of a struggle for some reason. I don't understand. He's tiny. It's like the same thing with Chucky. Like, what the fuck? How can you not overpower it? He then puts Gage to sleep, just like he did Church, and then burns down the house, destroying the evil he created for good. Well, at least until you see him come strolling out from behind the burning house holding his dead wife in his arms. You immediately know what's going on in his crazy-ass mind.
It will work this time, because she just died. Lewis! No!
The clock strikes midnight when the door cracks open and a grotesque hand reaches inside to open it. It's fucking undead Rachel, and she's got one hell of a backstabbing surprise for the doctor. What a truly epic ending to a truly epic film. This movie, just like Cujo, and It was pretty close as well, Stephen King's It, but this movie was very close to how the book was. I mean, of course, the book's a lot more in depth and goes in a little bit more into the doctor's psyche and what he's thinking about, you know, like being a doctor, life and death, what happens after we die, sort of thing. So it's all very grim material. The Pet Sematary is actually very accurate to the film, except for maybe with a couple of things left out, like whenever Gage kills Judd at the end. In the book, there's like a whole dialogue between Gage and Judd, you know, and he's like telling him about his wife being in hell and all this really dark shit. I guess there's certain things that they leave out for certain reasons, you know, for time reasons or just like trying to get an R rating and not getting some kind of like X rating or some shit, you know. For the most part, it's very close to the book. I want to go ahead and say that the soundtrack of the film is great. Right at the end of the movie, we get to hear the Ramones' Pet Sematary. Every time I hear it, I immediately think of this movie. What can I say but the cast of characters are amazing. The performance by Fred Gwynne, it's truly an iconic performance. Don't even get me started on the makeup effects. I mean, the blood on Pascal's head looks wet. He literally looks like a rotting corpse. And the practical effects are just as good. It was written by Stephen King. All around, just a really good flick. It was one of those movies that really stuck with me as a kid and really fucked with me and made me afraid to walk down the hallway and to go to the bathroom at nighttime, you know, because it was dark and I didn't want to fucking see Zelda or even think about that while I was fucking trying to go get something to drink out of the fridge or get a snack. And I think that's one of the great things about this film is that also kind of like Jaws, like it made people afraid to go into the water. This was just one of those movies that really struck a chord with everyone that watched it. This movie is just truly a timeless horror classic that will go on for years to come. Scott 86, Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Go check it out, folks. It's truly a scream. I'll see you guys on the next episode of Monster Mash. Oh, and remember, sometimes dead is better.